a good amount.
Was
Gonna
it all
preserve it.
CBD or just
No. Their oils are still there and all that stuff. Their T-shirts are still there. Everything. It's just infused in food.
Oh,
and right,
okay.
right, David. And
Got
that's
it.
a no-no. Right
Yeah,
now,
that-
that's a no-no. It's a stupid no-no. Okay, it really is.
It's just it's really just it's managed poorly. It really comes down to poor management, in my opinion, from the top. And I think, and I don't want to put all the blame on the CCC because there's lots of things that they are being held to. But I moved here from Illinois, and the Chicago market already is just its trajectory is going to put us to shame, and frankly it's embarrassing. There's a lot of people that need a lot of food, that need a lot of cannabis through food to help them digest. People like myself that are going through Crohn's disease, and we can get to that. But it's really beneficial to balance nausea, help people get their day started right, and if you can get good rest and have a good diet, you're really in the best place to battle anything that's coming your way. So it's amazing that flour and all these things were legal first. Frankly, it's baffling, but it's a business, and I think we all just have to remember that our generation is here to clean up a lot of things that have gone.
that my generation is screwed up. It's okay.
And before you.
Yeah.
It's not all on
I
you.
appreciate that.
It started, in the Industrial Food Revolution, but I really think that we are here to communicate the benefits and really, point out with our technology that there's so many federal.
We're still part of a very early. We're still part of a very early stage, huge industry, right, guys? And you have to. Patience is built into you if you're in this industry, don't you think?
It's a marathon, not a race.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, you've been in the queue for 8 months with not a lot of communication on, hey, you're,
Zero.
2 more weeks, you're
Zero.
ready to, you're just like, could be
Zero.
tomorrow, might be in 3 months.
Zero communication.
That's tough to do.
And we don't have any retail space. We're a manufacturer, so no one is coming into our storefront. So our security measures, our everything.
There we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Cannabis Chat, our live stream from our studios here just out of Boston, Massachusetts. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Cannabis Media. Cannabis Media is the parent company, if you will, of our production group and our group of like-minded internet sites. So, the name of this show is Cannabis Chat. However, because we do this 3 days a week, we wanted to differentiate between the Monday show, the Wednesday show, and the Friday show. So on Mondays, we do cannabinoid medicine, Medicinal Mondays. Wednesday, we call it Professor Weed Wednesdays because we actually educate and talk with educators and people who can educate our audience about cannabis. And then on Fridays, we do the Green Rush with David Rabinovitz, the business of cannabis. So there are 3 separate entities. And of course, we also have sometimes very special in-studio guests, but we also do live Zoomed interviews that we've lined up. And we have a few lined up a little bit later on, in about 30 minutes or so. We'll talk to a professor of culinary arts from the Cleveland School of Cannabis. Her name is Linda Berry. She'll be joining us in about 30 minutes. At the top of the hour, in about 60 minutes, Rob Mejia, who is not only a professor at Stockton University, but he also has an online course, and it's called Our Community Harvest Online Courses, and he's the brains behind that operation. And I actually guest taught, I don't even know. I was a guest in his class on Monday of this week. So we'll get his review on how I did with my little PowerPoint and videos and using Zoom and all that neat stuff. And then at 5:30, we have a very special guest. In fact, I'm not even going to tell you who it is because it's a special guest. And for those of you out there who actually follow us and know, we've got a team of people who support what we're doing here at Cannabis Media, help us out on the production side, on the business side, on the marketing side. And let's just say one of our team is going to be calling in and talking with us because we are going to be talking about cooking with cannabis with a professional chef. Her name is Sam Kanter, and she's with us now, and her company is called Dinner at Mary's.
Yes.
Thank you, Sam, for coming in.
Absolutely.
How are you? We are socially distanced for obvious reasons.
Yes, we are.
You know, back in the day, we used to want the news anchors to be tight and close so it looked like a team, and now you're seeing everybody separated for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your company and your background, because how in the world did you get into cooking with cannabis?
So I'm technically I'm not the chef. I do have a chef that I work with.
Yep.
So I'm the business owner. But Dinner at Mary's is the second cannabis events company that I've started, and I come from an events background, so that's how I got into the events world in general. I moved more into cannabis based on my personal use. So. Yeah. I think a lot of people find it interesting that I have used cannabis in my everyday life. So it's been a big part of my events company that I've had for 7 years,
okay.
But really on the back end. Dinner at Mary's is bringing it to the forefront. So really incorporating it into, we do events, catering, and now meal kits.
What was the event group that you worked with before you got into the cannabis dinner stuff?
I worked with Eat Sacrilegious. Originally.
I know that group.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you've spoken with David.
Right. That's why I know the group.
Yeah.
That's right. And in fact, during our conversation over the next couple hours, we'll be interspersing it with some clips that we did with David from a show that we did in, let's just say 2019, because if I could try to remember when it was, I'm going to guess October maybe. Dan McCarthy was on that show with us. Dan is also a friend of the program. Yep. He's now working with Canna Provisions out in Lee, Massachusetts.
Yep.
And I actually am a satisfied customer. I was out in the Lenox area this past weekend and decided to go through that experience.
Right. Yeah, I love Dan. I've known him for a very long time.
And everybody seems to know Dan McCarthy, which is great. I can't wait to actually get him to actually do his own show. Because if there's one person that I've met that deserves his own show is Dan McCarthy, right?
Yes.
And he's a lot of fun. And of course, Eric Williams is one of the owners out there at Canna Provisions in Lee, and he did the first ever In the Weeds podcast with me in this building in March, April of 2018. So we've been doing this for a while.
Nice.
So you went from Eat Sacrilegious to dinner, and you are the business owner. So who is your chef? If you're not the one in the kitchen.
I'm not the chef. Nick Escoto is the chef that I work with. So he's my chef partner. He's amazing, and the meal kit idea was from him, which has really been our pivot.
Tell us a little bit about the meal kit thing. I've seen some images of it. So
so we started doing 3-course high-end
private dinners.
Well, we do private dinners, but the meal kits are a high-end Blue Apron, if you will.
Okay.
So it's really bringing a restaurant dining experience into your home, and then there's an optional 20 milligram infused oil gift that you can incorporate into the recipe. And they've been great. I mean, they've been great during COVID. I think that it's exactly what people are looking for when they're not comfortable dining out. They're bringing things into their home, and then the cannabis is really elevating the experience.
Elevating the experience. There's so many puns and plays on words in this industry. We love doing that. Explain to me, you mentioned the 20 milligram oil?
Oil, yeah. We do an infused olive oil.
Now, how do you, and I've talked with Mass Cannabis Chefs before, Joe Nelson, I've talked with David. I guess the biggest question is, and now this was what I found fascinating, is you actually talk to the people who you're cooking for at private parties specifically, right?
Yes.
To find out what their knowledge is, experience is, because as we know, everybody has a different reaction to this stuff. Everybody has a different endocannabinoid system, which is tied to our neurotransmitters and all this neat stuff that we've learned through science and research that has actually moved the needle to get us to this point where we can actually talk about cannabis-infused foods, because we do know there are still some challenges that this is still a federally illegal substance.
Right.
And the amazing thing to me on so many fronts that it is part of our political debate these days, because everything seems to evolve around politics.
It really does. I know.
Over the next couple of weeks. And I do have a few news items that I might intersperse about this, because sure enough, there was another news item regarding cannabis that broke today with our current POTUS. And I understand that one of the states, Mississippi, has it on the ballot and for adult use legalization. And I believe one side was actually quoting the current POTUS about how he feels about medical marijuana, and incorporating that into their campaign. And it got to be a little dicey, and I believe there was a cease and desist involved. And it seems wherever our POTUS goes, controversy is sure to follow. Let's just leave it at that at this point, because I'm trying to be a little bit more balanced since I've already voted. Okay, so there you go.
I didn't vote yet, but I think you can imagine which direction I'm voting.
I'm sure you're from the Massachusetts area, and it's the nature of the beast. When did you first realize that, you know what, we could make a business out of this? We could create. What I'm looking for now is, how'd you come up with the model? I guess, because, you know, the private dinners has been going on for quite a while now, but here you guys have taken it into more of a online ordering service. Yes. So, I mean, we still do private catering events, have one tomorrow, but we really shifted, and I mean, this was, you know, really Nick's concept that he came up with, which I vetoed originally, which he likes to bring up. But of course he does.
Yes, but I always give him credit for this idea, because he, you know, came up with the concept, and you know, some other people are doing meal kits. I feel like I don't want to say lucky, because I think we did it correctly, but they worked really well from the beginning when we conceptualized it. So we decided, it helps with the legality. So we're talking about putting cannabis into food is still, it's not an FDA approved food additive. It's, you know, there's a challenge there. We are getting around that by not putting the cannabis into the food. So this is actually a much more legal aspect.
So you're cooking, and then you've got the oil.
Right. For the meal kits, the oil is totally separate. You're in your own home, you're adding that oil if you want to.
Gotcha.
To the food. It's not something that we're doing.
Gotcha.
So as far as legality goes, that definitely helps.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, when we're providing that gift, and then it's separated, which also makes the gifting much simpler and much more straightforward.
Right.
There are plenty of people that make the meal kits without cannabis.
Right, which is what I think Joe Nelson does with Mass Cannabis Chefs, is he asks the people, okay, how many, and then he actually infuses the meal with it in it and then serves it.
Yes,
Yeah.
which we do for on-site catering events as well.
Gotcha.
That there is some gray area when it comes to that,
Yeah.
because
Well,
we're putting it in, obviously.
Gray area. I learned all about that gray area in the seed industry today. I had no idea how much of a market there was with seeds, and I learned that
Yeah,
too,
with
which is
distribution.
what I love to do. I just like
Yeah.
finding out about how people are carving out their own little niche in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's still a challenge on the federal legal side, there's always lawyers involved. You're
Yeah.
always talking and getting advice. How can we do this best? I'm guessing you
Yeah.
got legal advice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, we've gotten advice from a lot of people and a lot of unsolicited advice, which I've been getting recently, which I think is interesting because we've really blown up recently. We had a Globe article, and a lot more people are finding out about the meal kits, which is great. It's kind of hilarious to me. Some people will just tell you what to do, and I'm like, I didn't ask. It's kind of wild. It's kind of wild.
When you say that, can you give me an anecdotal thing, perhaps without identifying who it might be?
Sure. I mean, there are people that are, telling us what kind of meals we should be offering, what dietary restrictions are important, which of course and a lot of these things we take into account and care about. And I appreciate feedback. And I think feedback is important when people are like, this would be great, I'd be interested in this, versus like, you should be doing it this way. And I'm like, well, if I should be doing it that way, maybe you should do it. Like, I just find it kind of interesting when it's unsolicited advice, like on how we're doing things. And I think we're doing things in a really great way right now. And we always are trying to improve and want updates and love feedback. I always ask for feedback. But yeah, it's interesting how some people go about that.
Well, of course they do. Everybody's an expert.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that?
Yes.
In whatever the
Everybody
world
knows
they're
what they're
in,
doing.
everybody's an expert. Okay. Let's go back to the 20 milligrams of oil that
Yep.
you share.
Mm-hmm.
I learned about decarboxylation.
Yes.
And I tried to say that word at least once a show, just so it
Or just make it short and say decarb.
decarb. Okay, decarb. Because
yeah.
you've got to take the flower, the bud,
Mm-hmm.
and then turn it into a product that can be infused in foods. And of course, we're seeing the emergence of the infused beverage industry starting
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the oil. First of all, for the record, I take a CBD oil dropper every morning with my turmeric. Is it turmeric? Turmeric?
Turmeric.
Turmeric.
Yeah.
Well, whatever. It's that orange goo.
Yep.
And I have it in liquid form, and then I put a little oil in it, take my shot every morning for my arthritis and inflammation that I have.
And it helps.
I will tell you this. I don't notice my pain. I don't notice my pain as much during the day or at night when I do take it.
Yeah.
When I miss a day or two, I notice that my hands are aching.
Right.
So there is absolutely a correlation between that, which is, again, this goes to the whole argument about how it can enhance your life, how it can improve
Absolutely.
your life.
Right.
And it sounds like you are a regular, someone who enjoys it, and
Absolutely.
medicinally and or for recreation. I mean, there is that fine line, I believe.
It's a very fine line. I am a medical patient.
Yep, me too.
However, I think it's really interesting. Like, you use CBD, I don't. For me, I'm a THC girl, and I feel like THC gets a bad rap in the medicinal world, and thinks that CBD is for medicine and THC is for getting high, and I don't agree with that.
No,
at all.
I- no,
I think that
and
there's a lot of medical benefits to THC as well.
And
that's-
I'm
that's
sure
what works
you're
for me.
well versed on the entourage effect.
Yeah.
How the CBD really needs the
Right.
help from the THC
Yeah, we're-
to maximize
The
its
two together work really well. Yes.
Right, and as a medicinal patient, you know that there are strains out there that are 2-to-1, 1-to-1,
Right.
and all that. And I literally try different things because
Gotta see what works for you.
it's really about when you deal with chronic pain, trying to explain what that's like to others is very difficult because your mind is very powerful and your mind controls your pain receptors. And it's one of the reasons why a lot of the topical products out there, a lot of people think, oh, you just rub it on and it feels better. Well, that's great. And then, of course, you talk to doctors and go, well, there's no research on this. And I go, well, let me tell you something. As someone who gets inflamed joints, if I'm going to rub something on and you're telling me it's a placebo and it takes my pain away, I could care less.
It still works. So, yeah.
It still works, right? It does the trick. When you give the oils to others and you say that it's 20 milligrams, do you give them any marching orders on it? Like, don't put all 20 milligrams in this dish.
Yes. So we give really specific instructions, and we give recommendations, but also kind of walk people through it. So on the recipe, we're explaining, yes, this, if you chose to include the gift, it's 20 milligrams. It's designed for 2 guests, so it's designed for 10 milligrams a person.
Yeah.
But if you're not familiar or use cannabis a lot, we recommend a lower dose and starting with 5 milligrams a person. So there are typically 3 places in the recipe that you can add this oil. And we also give instructions on how long it takes. So keeping in mind, it can take up to 2 hours. Start low and slow. So all those instructions are included in the recipe. But there are 3 different places that you can add it, not add it. So it's really up to you. We design, our entire company is based on a dosage control model. There are so many people, I think, that were been scared away from edibles, scared away from cannabis in general, just from having too much.
That one bad experience.
One bad experience.
And everybody has the edible experience that they overdid.
Yes, the brownie in college, and we'll never do it again. So we bring a lot of people back to cannabis.
Okay.
So we certainly try to bring new people into it that haven't tried it, but
Yep.
a lot of our customers are people that used to use cannabis or have in the past and kind of got scared away from it, and now we're kind of hand-holding them back into it and
Right.
making it accessible. So 5 milligrams is what we typically recommend if they're not super experienced, seeing how that feels. And you have the option of putting it into any of the dishes or not. And again, it's 3 courses. That's why it's, there's a place in each course to add it. For example, I make the meal kits every week, and I put the cannabis into the first 2 courses. And then if I want to eat the dessert, I eat the dessert later once I feel the effects. And then I don't need to put it in. So that's a great way to do it.
Right.
That.
And it makes perfect sense because the munchies, everybody thinks that just because you're smoking weed, you're immediately going to get the munchies and all this. And you don't immediately, right?
No, not necessarily. Sometimes there seems to be no rhyme or reason to it. But yeah. Yes, you might enjoy the dessert more later, an hour or so after you eat.
And I have a sweet tooth too, so
the desserts are great. And I always tell Nick, I'm like, you don't know how good your desserts are. Like he builds off of classic recipes. I think he doesn't give himself enough credit. But
what's his background? Did he go to culinary school?
He went to culinary school.
Which one? Do we know which one?
He went to Cambridge Institute.
Okay.
And he actually, before COVID, was teaching cooking classes there as well. He's worked at a bunch of restaurants, and we're really lucky to have him. He's been great.
It's funny. One of the interviews I got to do a few months ago at this point was Jamie Pearson. She's the CEO of Bang Chocolate, BHANG. It's the #1 edible chocolate in Canada.
Nice.
And she's a great success story, and was featured in the Jim Belushi show, the Grown Belushi show, I might add. But the way she started was a chocolatier, and you know how chocolatiers are, how good they are.
Yeah.
I believe the chocolatier found her and said, "Hey, if you ever want to do anything, I'm more than willing to add THC into my chocolates and turn them into edible products." And that's kind of how her company started. And
nice.
I think I love the entrepreneurial spirit. And this is truly feeding it in the cannabis industry.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I totally love that. Another thing that we're doing, it's almost 4:20, so I want to set up our 4:20 break. Couple of things. We have our chat room open, and I'm going to challenge those who might be out there watching. Is there something different about our set or something different that we might be introducing here today for the first time? Let's see how observant people are. And if you do come up with something, we will take your information. And you know what? We could talk out. We'll talk in a break, but maybe there's a way that we could keep promoting you guys in exchange for like a gift of a percentage off a dinner at Mary's or something like that. Because this is definitely, we want to start engaging with our audience anyway. And this is a good way to do it. But since it's coming up, it is 4:20. Everyone in the cannabis community understands the 420 is the code. Like it might be time to actually go out and catch a buzz because it all started at San Rafael High School in California in 1971. A group of guys, they called themselves the Waldos. They would meet at the Louis Pasteur statue across the street from their high school to catch a buzz. Now, law enforcement, being the law enforcers that they are, picked up on the fact that it was at 420. They actually started using 420 as a code themselves. Public consumption of cannabis going on at the corner of Vine and Main. Check it out, 420. And it already became part of the whole cannabis culture, and now it's celebrated by the community, and it is a time to actually go out and step out and take a break and enjoy. It's almost near the end of the day and all that. So every 420 on our shows, we take a break, a little bit different. We let Jonathan Edwards play the song Shanti. And the reason why I have this as part of this whole thing that we're doing is Shanti was our version of 420, or my version of 420, growing up in the greater Boston area, listening to an AM station named WCAS. It was a daytimer, 7:40 a.m. And guess what they played on the radio? They played Shanti on the radio. When we heard it, it was another excuse for us to step outside and partake, if you will. So sit back, enjoy Jonathan Edwards singing Shanti, and we'll be back on the other side of 420.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in 19... I've forgotten. We had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, just, like every other night, just going to lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Pass it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. We'll take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. You're on something. Go ahead. Rick Brodsky, everybody. Nothing to do and there's always room for more. Fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Take it, okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. sit down in my rented car. I'm gonna jam it into drive. Gonna head on out and play at WSCA with Sean. I'm glad I'm alive. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on every night and day. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
Nice. It's Friday. Thank God. Thank God Jonathan Edwards is joining us live in the WSCA studios.
Do. I mean, he even admits, this is the song that made me famous. Sunshine was a big hit, and Shanti was just more of a cult song. And of course, we are resurrecting that and enlightening a whole new generation about the words to Shanti, who Jonathan Edwards is, and he lives in New England. He's from New Hampshire. And hopefully one day he'll take the drive down, and we can put him in the corner and put a camera on him and do the whole thing again live, which would be great. But right now we're talking with Sam Kanter, and she is the owner of Dinner at Mary's, which is a meals to go service, but also a catering service. You do private dinners as well, and in the Boston area.
Yes.
And we were talking a little bit in the break about how many meals a week do you guys actually do?
Yeah.
And how does that all work?
So we're expanding every week. We are not releasing our numbers to the public, but
okay, that's all right. You don't have to share. I appreciate you sharing them with me, and I'm not going to report on them. So there you go.
But yeah, we're
growing.
We're growing.
There you go.
That's what we're talking about right now. Yeah, we're growing. We're doing more and more every week, and that's the goal for me for sure. And we're excited to see what numbers we can get. We're growing the quickest we can right now, which is nice.
Yep.
So we're kind of on pace of where we want to be, what our capabilities are, and really working on the back end to have bigger capabilities so that we can do
There you go.
more.
There you go. So whenever we hear the ding dong doorbell, we know that one of our scheduled guests is coming on and is going to join us.
Great.
And now I get to introduce Professor Linda Berry. Hi, Linda, how are you? Uh-oh.
I'm doing well. I had the program on.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. You are a professor at the Cleveland School of Cannabis, our friends out there in Ohio, and I appreciate you joining us today. How are you? How are things out in Ohio today?
Well, actually, I'm in Virginia, so I teach for the school. I started in Ohio, working in Pearson, but now I'm in Virginia, and I still teach classes, but they're online.
Gotcha.
So we're working on the national audience now.
Gotcha. Well, that's great, and we're happy that you're able to join us here. And I do have a person in studio with me today. Her name is Sam Kanter, and she's running a dinner, online dinner, meals to go kind of a business, and is involved in this as well. So we have a lot of stuff to talk about. But I guess the first thing I do want to ask you right off the bat is, when you are a chef, okay, the most important thing is you're not taking the flour off the stalk, chopping it up like you would parsley or basil, and then sprinkling it on the food. You actually have to decarboxylate it, right?
You have to decarboxylate it if you're looking to get the full spectrum of that plant. There are a lot of people that actually use THC A, which is THC without the decarboxylation, and they use that for different medicinal purposes. So there are people who they'll take the plant and they'll either sprinkle it for flavor. There's a chef, his name is Leather Stores. He actually just did a show on Netflix. And he'll use the THCA, which is the plant that's not decarboxylated, for the flavor, for some of the other medicinal benefits. But the decarboxylation process actually activates that entire cannabinoid. So you can do either way. There are people who juice the plant as well.
Right. And there are machines that will decarboxylate it for you. But I believe that you can also do it, I don't know, the way they've done it probably for thousands of years before people knew what the hell to call the damn thing. How does a rookie chef in the kitchen who wants to try the trade, if you will, would you go about doing decarboxylation like with a frying pan? Is that accurate?
So I don't necessarily recommend a frying pan for the decarboxylation. I recommend putting it into the oven on just a baking sheet and like either parchment paper or a steel pat mat to catch any of the shake or the keef that's going to fall off of your cannabis while it's in the oven, and putting it in for 240 degrees for 30 minutes. And that's going to be the easiest way to decarboxylate your THC. If you don't have a machine, if you don't have another way that you prefer to do it.
So again, I have to have a science degree sometimes to understand half this stuff, right? You take the flour. Now, do you put anything on the flour in the pan?
No, there are some people they will spray like alcohol because they believe that you get a better extraction that way, but you don't have to. For the most part, I just recommend breaking your cannabis down so that you're able to get more of that surface heat onto the cannabis, because when you're activating your cannabis, it's happening thermally. So you need to break the cannabis down a little bit, just put it on a single layer and then put it into the oven that way.
Okay. And you said it was 30 minutes at 240, correct?
Yep.
Wow. I mean, it sounds simple, but it's something I've avoided for my entire life. When you get right down to it, it's the same way I feel about actually taking the seeds and planting them. That's too much pressure. There's too much pressure on me to get this going and to do that. So I've always avoided it, and I kind of give it back to, I'm also a medical patient, so I say I'm going to go to the medical dispensary and try a brownie or a cookie or a gummy or the honey. I enjoyed the honey as well.
He's really good.
What are some of the strangest things that people have cooked with cannabis, as far as you know?
Well, the fact that you can cook anything with cannabis, I think that could probably be a little bit strange. When peanut butter started to become infused with cannabis, initially I was like, I don't know that I want cannabis in my peanut butter, but it makes sense. I actually, I use cannabis for my rheumatoid arthritis. So for me, being able to put it into something like a peanut butter or put it into something like honey, that actually what I thought started off as being something I was like, I don't know about this. It's something that I actually prefer now. I started cooking with cannabis 6 years ago. So when I was experimenting, seeing where I was then versus where I am now as an actual cannabis professional, I don't know that I've seen something that's like crazy out there, but I would say that usually when most people get introduced, their first reaction is, oh, you infuse into butters, you infuse into oils. And I don't know if they think of it as weird, but just out of the norm to infuse something like a honey or a peanut butter or something along those lines.
There you go. And because there's always a delayed effect to the edible experience, I know a lot of people will do it once, end up perhaps not getting any effect in the first hour, and decide, you know what, I'll double the dose or whatever they put in it, and then they have a really bad experience, and then they never go back. But there is definitely a responsible way to cook with it and find out what is the magic amount of product that you put in, correct?
Yeah, the recommendation is to start low and increase slowly. So it takes a little bit of patience. When you see people that are like, I tried an edible, it knocked me out, I'm never trying edibles again. That's usually because they're coming in at a very high dosage, either the first time that they're trying it, or they may be experiencing a cannabis edible that's the right dosage and it's taking longer than expected to kick in. So they go ahead and they take another bite, or I'm an advocate for microdosing when you're first starting, which is starting with 5 to 10 milligrams and then working your way up from there. Yeah. But there are people that are like, I just need 100 milligrams. And I'm like, but are you sure you need 100 milligrams when you're first starting out? Because most of the time that means that you're dealing with someone that doesn't actually know what they're doing in the kitchen. If you're starting out that high and you're saying, yeah, 100 milligrams, or you're going to have a really bad experience with the cannabis, which may be you being couch locked. It may be you not being able to function or having a panic attack, which that's when people they do things like call the police, like I think I'm dying. And it's not that they're dying, it's that they're having an undesirable effect because they didn't start at the milligram amount that they needed. And most people don't usually need to start at 100 milligrams. So when I have students like that, I'm like, no, who told you that? I know it sounds great, but in the professional space right now, 30 milligrams is actually starting to become considered, like 20 to 30 milligrams is the sweet spot in the industry right now. It's not 100 milligrams.
Well, okay, so let's make this very clear right off the bat here. First of all, Sam is here, and when we mentioned the 100 milligrams, she was like, no.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
I start with 5. I always tell people to start with 5 milligrams.
Yeah,
I feel like that's the move.
And I'm not even sure 5 milligrams is considered a microdose anymore. I think 2.5 milligrams.
Well, you can't even find the 2.5s anymore, I feel
Well,
like.
you got to cut the 5 milligram in half, right?
Yeah, but like as a heavy cannabis user, I take 5 milligrams at a time. That's it.
Yeah, and I've found a comfort zone of about 10 milligrams. And since I always say I'm the oldest guy on this show anyway, I probably have put more milligrams in over my lifetime than everybody here. I don't want more than 10 milligrams. I had a 33 milligram experience my first time with an edible, and it was not pleasant, let's just say. Granted, I shouldn't have had the martini when I did, let's just say, because when you start mixing, you are taking that effect times about 8, right?
Yeah, you exasperate the effect for sure.
And that's one of the things that people don't really understand is like it's an either or experience, really, especially Sam's. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, I mix, but I am experienced. I think you have to be really careful. So our events, we don't, we never have liquor. We've done some beer and wine. We really leave that up to them, but we typically recommend no alcohol if they're having a cannabis experience because it's challenging and it really accentuates both things. And if you're not experienced with it, it can be really challenging.
Right.
And dangerous. I mean, that's not what we're
that's the most, and again, we preach it, responsible moderation and use of this product because truly it's accepted almost universally that it has medicinal qualities. So you're asking the public to self-medicate with something that they may never have even understood before, or maybe they were at a party back in the day at college and they took a puff or two, and whether they inhaled or not, whether they ran for president or not, something like that. Anyway, point being, again, you really have to be careful with this substance when you ingest it. And the other thing that we learned is having a full stomach or even a little something in your body helps with the experience. What's your feeling about that?
It does. If you eat, that helps with the experience because the cannabis isn't just going in and being the first thing that's consumed. So like, I liken it to when you are experiencing someone that's like, yeah, I woke up in the morning and I just consumed cannabis. And you're gonna feel like that cannabis is gonna kick in a little quicker, which you may or may not feel like that's a good thing. But in terms of having a balanced experience, consuming food with your cannabis, much the same way as you will with alcohol. Your experience consuming food with your alcohol versus food without alcohol is going to be completely different. And so it's the same with cannabis as well.
It's the same, but it's the opposite almost, right? Because if you're drinking on an empty stomach, you're going to get drunker, whereas if you're consuming cannabis without, because it's a huge thing for me. If I need to have a meal for an edible to affect me, I have to have something in my stomach. If I'm on an empty stomach, I won't even feel it at all. It's totally
So it's good to have something like an appetizer or a tapas, a small plate, right?
Yeah.
Before you partake in an edible will enhance the experience, yes?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm going to tell you this, that if you do and want to try to mix, do not count the drinks or the amount of beers, count the sips, because there will be an immediate effect every time you take a sip of an alcohol drink if you have any THC-based cannabis in there. Good advice, guys? Yeah, sipping?
Yeah, you should be careful. I mean, thinking about alcohol in general, most
poison.
people have it's poison. Yeah.
Sorry.
But
it's good tasting poison, but it's poison.
Most people have more experience with alcohol than cannabis.
Right.
And if you think back to, when you first started drinking, the measurement is easier, and you understand, okay, this many drinks of this type does this, and vice versa. And I think that research is really important for people to do when it comes to cannabis. So I know if I have 3 vodka drinks, I'm going to feel a certain way. If I've eaten this much food, cannabis, I've done that research, so now I know if I've had 5 milligrams in that kind of scenario, that's what it's going to do. And most people don't. And I think that it's important to know separately how they affect you, and then also how they affect you together if you ever are going to combine them. But it takes a little research. You got to figure it out, and people don't always put in that effort, and I think it can be really beneficial.
Right.
People do.
We
Linda,
actually,
go ahead.
we have a lot of students that come in and they don't even know that alcohol exasperates cannabis. So that's something that we have to go back and we have to teach the students. And then if I do events or if I'm doing a private dinner, it's definitely something that we don't even introduce alcohol because of that. So we'll do a mocktail and we'll use something like a CBD in the mocktail, but we do not actually use alcohol with our dinners because most people don't understand that principle.
Yeah. Agreed.
You know, and it's really interesting from a business perspective what's going on now in the world, because you're seeing beer companies investing in the cannabis space. They recognize that there's another adult intoxication product out there that's becoming more and more well-known and more accessible. And after they've established themselves as the giants in the intoxication business, if you will, they want to be part of it. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how it all rolls out. I believe in California, you're already seeing infused beverages. Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Right. I was just gonna say, yeah, I saw PBR, but they're not. But it's not created by PBR. It's,
Right.
It's like they're lending the name, which to me is confusing. Not sure I totally understand why they're doing that, but
It's called money and advertising and
yes,
branding
yes,
and all that, right?
But like, how do you put your name on something you're not actually doing? And I
Right,
guess that's just
right.
a business thing. I feel like you should be involved, but
Right.
yeah, I mean, I hope that the alcohol conglomerates don't take over because they have their thing.
Well,
like,
and yet, while you say that, Sam, I'm going to go on the other side and say they have experience in their thing.
Fair enough.
And, you know, you're talking about another adult intoxicating product.
Right.
And I believe that God put it on this earth to enhance our lives, not to dull our senses, make us make stupid mistakes like getting behind the wheel of a car when you've had too many drinks or even one or two drinks, because it absolutely will affect your reflexes, as opposed to sometimes the cannabis effect and some of the sativas that are out there, the ones that help you focus, actually those who have driven under the influence of a sativa-based cannabis plant might actually feel like, I actually drive better.
Yeah.
What do you you've heard this story too, am I right, Linda?
Yeah, I have. It just depends on the strain. And I was gonna say, back to the beer companies getting into the cannabis industry, we teach a lot about terpenes at the college, and hopefully in the beer industry getting more involved in the cannabis space, hopefully there's some crossover in, I guess, pairing some of the natural terpenes that you find in some of the beers from the hops with some of the strains if they get into the THC side of things, because I feel like that would be a natural way to kind of merge those two industries, as opposed to being like, hey, this is the green rush, so now we're going to jump on board.
Right.
I think that there are ways that they can kind of get involved.
There is a beer company that uses terpenes, and I'm blanking on the name.
That's right. I know Google knows.
Google definitely knows. Excuse me, Sweetwater 420.
Thank you. See?
Okay,
and all I had to do.
I'm familiar with Sweetwater.
Yeah, we partnered with them and have had some of their beer at our events, and it's really terpene focused. And they originally, I think, tried to incorporate CBD and THC, and it didn't work super well with it just didn't work out. But
Didn't work.
Yeah, terpenes are I think a great additive and a great way for those two to pair versus alcohol and cannabis, more of like terpene that doesn't have the same.
I'm going to ask the professor a little quiz. Can you define what a terpene is? Now, we talk a lot about terpenes on this show, and we've had our scientists on and all this, but I always like to hear how people who do understand the effects of the terpenes in the plant, how you define what the terpenes do.
So my terpene breakdown, because I work with populations I work with the college, but I also do education seminars for just the industry and just people that are in the community. So my terpene breakdown is a little bit different. So what I like to say is that the terpene is one of the essential oils of a plant. And when you're thinking about terpenes in cannabis, you have your major cannabinoids that are like the steering wheel to your car, or the wheels of your car. And the terpene is like the steering wheel that's going to kind of tell you, well, your sativa is going to give you a upper effect. Like it's going to make you maybe more happy or more giggly, but that terpene is going to go ahead and is going to say, okay, cool. And now this is also going to help you to be more focused. So that's pretty much how I explain it. I explain it in terms of a car because people get it. They're like, oh, okay, cool. So my THC, my CBD, that's going to be my wheels. And then the terpene is going to kind of turn that car into whatever direction.
That was absolutely perfect and exactly how most people describe it, the steering mechanism in the plant. And great analogy. Great analogy. I knew you. I didn't think I was putting you on the spot here at all. Okay. I appreciate that. What's some of the, if you were looking at the future, where do you think we're going to see the infusion of the THC-based cannabis in foods, beverages? Where do you think we're moving towards?
Well, beverages are already huge.
Right.
I think that you're going to continue to see that beverage industry just take off with the cannabis involved because the sublingual effect happens so much. I don't want to say so much quicker, but it happens at a faster rate than when you're consuming the cannabis by eating it. I think that if we're talking about cannabis and edibles, I think that you're going to continue to see cannabis be infused into meals, which is why I love that you have a whole meal company represented, because people don't usually think about cannabis edibles that way initially. They think about the brownies, they think about the cookies. So I think that that's going to continue to be the wave of the future, is going to grow. But then outside of just eating cannabis, I think that when you're thinking about like suppositories, I think that way, I feel like the cannabis industry is going to continue to go in that way as well, because it just makes natural sense. And that part of the industry isn't as explored as I feel like it should be, because that also goes into the bloodstream the same way that the beverage industry has just taken off, because it affects your body a little faster than if you're consuming the food.
There you go. It's funny, she mentioned suppositories, and it's always kind of a giggly thing, right? I'm in the classroom at Stockton University yesterday online. Rob Mejia is going to join us in a few minutes, in about 10 minutes. And he was going over the quiz that he had. And the question about suppositories on this quiz, okay, and I'm just going to throw it out there. I don't know if anybody's going to know the answer to this, but the question was, how far do you need to insert into your anus the suppository for it to be effective? Now,
I have no idea.
Right? No idea, right? Because right, okay. Just for the record, the answer was 1.5 inches, and I'm like, and who's measuring it? That's what I want to know, because it makes absolutely no right. Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there. You brought up you used the word, and that's where my brain immediately went to that quiz item. And we'll be talking with the professor about that in about 10 minutes, too, because I want to know who's measuring this and where did you find the research on that one, right? Anyway.
Research and everything, right?
That's right. We're talking with Linda Berry, the professor at Cleveland School of Cannabis. What's the name of your course that you teach?
I teach the Cooking with Cannabis course. So it's pretty straightforward. Yep.
So it's the cooking with, but do you see other courses, like would it be dessert cooking with cannabis? Would it be entree, vegan cooking with cannabis? Will we see other spin-offs of this course eventually, do you think?
I believe so. Right now we are teaching at a basic level. We have students that come in that don't even know how to cook. So right now we're at a 100 level for sure. But I do definitely see us going into a 200 level where we're able to expound more upon. Now you take these menus, that's part of the project that the students have to do. You take these menus, and now here's a way to replicate the menus. And if you are a medical user in Ohio, because especially for me, because I'm online, here are different ways that you can take the extractions that you know how to do and infuse them at home, or infuse them at school, or however we are deciding to do that. But I definitely see us in the future getting to a 200 level, a 300 level, because we also have professional chefs that come in. And honestly, professional chefs that come in, it's interesting because they know food, but they don't know cannabis with food. So we're teaching them how to do this safely, and they're the ones that are going to be able to go out and really put on their own events and partner with different companies. Much like it's Alex, right?
It's Jimmy and Sam.
Sam, much like Sam's company, I was excited. I was watching the interview before now, but I think that is something that we want to continue to do in the future, is make sure that we are not just giving a 100 level, but also when we have professionals that come in just to learn about cannabis, giving them more of an exploration. Because I know for me, I've been in the cannabis space on a professional level for the past 3 years doing events, both large events and private events. So definitely something that we're looking forward to.
And speaking of some of those events that you've done, when we chatted yesterday for the first time, you actually have cooked for some pretty well-known celebrities, let's just say.
Yeah, I have. So I work with Chef Nikki Stewart, and with her company, we do the High End Affair, and we travel all over the United States. We're sponsored by Weed Maps. We have some pretty cool partnerships, but it's afforded us the opportunity to make food for people like Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock, which Chris Rock was just on the Ellen show, and he's like, yeah, so, Dave Chappelle has his weed chef. And I was like, thanks, Chris. It's a great shout out. But yeah, I mean, the celebrities are learning a lot in this space as well, because for the most part, a lot of the celebrities that we work with were recreational users. And so we're able to now introduce them to the education side of things as well.
That's great. That's great. I love hearing that. And again, we're working towards, everybody calls this the new normal because of COVID and everything, but don't forget the cannabis industry was talking about the new normal before COVID hit. I just want to say, not that we, I'm not keeping score or anything at home, but that is accurate.
That is accurate.
And anyway, Chef Linda Berry, Professor Linda Berry, thank you so much for coming on today, talking with us about this. I really have enjoyed the educators that we are getting on our show from the Cleveland School of Cannabis. I always learn, I always say, everyone has something to teach someone else, whether it's the life journey that they've been on or their experience in their expertise in their field. Whatever it is, they have something to teach and share. And I really have enjoyed chatting with you. And I now know temperature 240, 30 minutes with a in the oven. That's what I learned today. So appreciate your time.
Parchment paper under it to catch the shake or if anything falls off. So thank you for having me. Thank you for having the Cleveland School of Cannabis back on your show. We really enjoyed it. Sam, I'm going to be checking out your company. I'm so excited about that.
Please do. Yeah.
It's going to be tough to deliver to Virginia, but at least now you've got a medical program in Virginia that's happening. So, and by the way, she is the business owner. She's willing to relocate and franchise and do all that stuff, right?
We'll figure something out for sure.
I love that.
Sam, I'll be reaching out.
All right.
Sounds great.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it so much, Linda. So before we take a break, I do want to play one clip that we prepared, and I also is going to allow me to hopefully not butcher David's name. Youssef Sadeh, right? He's with Eat Sacrilegiously, is that what it is?
Eat Sacrilegious.
Eat Sacrilegious.
I'm not sure if he still is, to be honest.
That's where he earned his reputation and cut his teeth, if you will.
Yeah, Cloud Creamery is primarily what he does, I believe. Yeah.
Right, and I know the Cloud Creamery Group because absolutely has been on a show that I did with Kurt Dalton earlier. I think it was earlier, I don't know if it was this year or last year. I mean, has this not been the longest year in creation in all of our lives? Okay.
I know, how do we keep track?
But anyway, we were talking about infusing food with THC-based cannabis. And here's a clip from that Weed Talk show we did a few months ago.
Is it all CBD or just
No. Their oils are still there and all that stuff. Their T-shirts are still there. Everything. It's just infused in food.
Oh,
and right,
okay.
right, David. And
Got
that's
it.
a
Yeah.
no-no. Right
Yeah,
now, that's a
right.
no-no. It's a stupid no-no. Okay, it really is.
It's managed poorly. It really comes down to poor management, in my opinion, from the top. And I don't want to put all the blame on the CCC because there's lots of things that they are being, held to. But I moved here from Illinois, and the Chicago market already is just its trajectory is going to put us to shame. And frankly it's embarrassing. There's a lot of people that need a lot of food, that need a lot of cannabis through food to help them digest. People like myself that are going through Crohn's disease, and we can get to that. But it's really beneficial to balance nausea, help people get their day started right. And if you can get good rest and have a good diet, you're really in the best place to battle anything that's coming your way. So it's amazing that flour and all these things were legal first. Frankly, it's baffling, but it's a business, and I think we all just have to remember that our generation is here to clean up a lot of things that have gone.
That my generation is screwed up. It's okay.
And before you.
Yeah.
It's not all on you.
I appreciate that.
It started, in the Industrial Food Revolution, but I really think that we are here to communicate the benefits and really, point out with our technology that there's so many federal research projects that showed positive results that were not funded by the federal government, and we're happy to do it.
Everything
Media. On Wednesdays, we call it Professor Weed Wednesdays. I'm Jimmy Young, the host and founder of Pro Cannabis Media and the host of this show. In studio with us has been Sam Kanter. dinneratmarys.com is her website. And joining us now on our Zoom interview line is Professor Rob Mejia from Stockton University. Hello, Professor Mejia. How are you? Good, and thank you so much for joining us. Do we have a visual or not? No visual today, Rob?
That's weird. I turned on my camera. I'm not sure why you can't see me.
Well, we're seeing Mawa at night right now with your name on it, which is, obviously, I love making you laugh. You have such a great belly laugh. I love that. So let me tell you a little bit about Rob as he tries to figure out how to turn on his camera, or if he doesn't, it's not a big deal. We got your name up there. He's an adjunct professor from Stockton University, and that's in southern New Jersey. And he teaches the preparation for cannabis internship and introduction to medical cannabis courses that is part of the minor in cannabis at Stockton University. And he also is involved with Our Community Harvest. He's written a few books on this, and I actually had him on In the Weeds with me a couple of months ago, and for some reason, he invited me into his classroom this week to talk with his students about the importance of an internship, because the internship that I did back as a junior at Tufts University changed my life and my career path, and I hope, Rob, it was well received. Was it?
Absolutely. Actually, the students remarked that they loved your energy, your sense of humor, and they also liked that your story was kind of similar to theirs. They are looking for their internship. They're looking for their foot in the door, and they liked that you went out there and you just did it. You sent in material, you followed up, and you delivered. And I think that's a good message for them, that they have to get out there and grab it.
I appreciate that, Rob. What I found amazing is when I finally guilted your kids into turning their video cameras on, the different ages of the different students in there. That was kind of fascinating to me.
Yeah, I have to say, for that class, I have students who are 20. Most want to be 21 because it is an internship class, and of course that opens up more opportunity for them. So the youngest student I have is 20, and the oldest, I won't give you the age, but older than you and me, Jimmy.
Good job, Rob. That was very well done. That was very well. So that means they're over 63, let's just say, because I know how old I am. Okay.
Fair enough.
Rob, what's one of the things that you've learned yourself recently about the cannabis plant? And I'm gonna tell you, I already told the story about your quiz and the question about suppositories. I had to do it. Who knew how far you had to put the damn suppository in your ass? All right, I mean, and now I know because I followed the quiz.
Well,
but is there something out there that you've learned recently about the cannabis plant that you were kind of intrigued about?
Well, to follow up on the suppository question, it actually is important, because if you don't, the medicine is not delivered, and it is one of the most efficient methods of delivery if you do it right. So, yeah, as uncomfortable as that sounds, even right now I'm screwing in my chair a little bit. That's important. That's important to do it. I think one of the interesting things that I learned recently about the cannabis plant is that if you are a grower, that the cannabis plant actually follows a lot of the same. It likes a lot of the same things that tomato plants do. So it likes a lot of the same environment, humidity, sunshine, nutrients. So if you can grow a decent tomato plant, if you're able to grow at home and you follow that regimen, you'll actually be able to grow a cannabis plant.
Well, that's kind of cool. I like analogies and comparisons. I did tell you about Sam and her business model, the Dinner at Mary's business model. New Jersey has a ballot question that is now polling 3 in favor to 1 against the adult use cannabis industry opening up for sale in New Jersey. Again, another opportunity for entrepreneurs to perhaps go. Are there any catering services in New Jersey offering these kind of infused dinners?
There are a few. There's more pop-up right now. So New Jersey actually has some interesting regulations where they do allow CBD infused food and beverage. So before COVID, regardless of what town you're in New Jersey, you could walk down the street and find a coffee place, And one of the most popular things was to have your coffee and then to get 10 milligrams of CBD added to it for an extra $2 or $3. And so many places offered that product. But then going further, I do know a number of chefs who would go into people's homes. I also did a couple of these events as well, but they were all CBD infused. We're not there yet where Massachusetts is. I would love to see some THC infused dinners in New Jersey at some point, but we're not there yet. So there's kind of a small service of people who do provide CBD infused food and beverage.
So that's confused. Like we were for a little bit doing some CBD stuff, and then everyone got shut down because I thought that was federally illegal that you couldn't put CBD into food the same way you can't put THC into food. So I'm surprised.
You're bringing up that tremendous cannabis issue that goes across almost everything, that it's hard to say something is totally legal, totally illegal. So on a federal level, you could look at CBD as being entirely illegal, but then you could also look at the Farm Act and say, oh no, it's entirely legal.
Right.
But in New Jersey, we actually have legislation that does say, and there's a couple lines that I've had to pull out that does say that you can infuse food and or beverage with CBD. But then it doesn't give you any guidelines about how much or anything else about that. It just says that you can do it. And so people are just doing it until we get stopped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ask for forgiveness, not permission.
That's right. And yet this is another reason why this election is so important, because it really is historic, and there is such a division between the two parties on so many fronts. But the cannabis front is pretty much front and center, which is absolutely amazing to me that, we're talking about that now. And I've already voted. So my vote is one of the 28 million that's already hopefully been counted somewhere, or at least, I don't even know. Do you know if they are actually counting the mail-in votes as they come in, or are they just counting those votes total voting? Anybody?
Every state does it differently. I know that New Jersey is going to start counting this Saturday, but
Gotcha.
there are some states like Wisconsin, I believe, that they won't even start until all the ballots, or until the polling is closed.
Till the polling's closed, right? And again, I will tell you this: after years of being a voter, and always saying, as I walk into the polling place, giving them my name, telling them my address, they tell me which ward or whatever precinct I'm in, and then I go and I fill it out. But never do they ask you for your ID when you go in to make your vote. And I've always said that is the strangest thing I've ever. To buy Robitussin in CVS, I have to show my ID. But I can vote, and nobody's going to question my identity at all. And when I voted by mail this year, and I took a picture of myself, or video actually, of me putting it into the box, I had a record of it. And I felt a far better, secure experience. And that was just personally. I don't know how you feel about that.
I also voted by mail, as did the rest of my family. And the one concern I have, though, is my signature, because my signature has absolutely changed over the past probably 20 years. 20 years ago, I probably would have gotten a nice penmanship award, and I used my middle initial. But over time, I don't know if it's because I just was writing too much or got lazy or whatever, but now it looks like a doctor's a doctor's scribble, and it does not look like it did probably when I registered to vote.
Interesting. But are they matching that signature from when you registered to vote, or are they matching it to what the state has on record for the driver's license? That I don't know.
At least in New Jersey, they match it to when I registered to vote. And so I did look at that signature, and I did sign it that same way, or as closely as I could.
Right. And of course, my fingers are all arthritic now, so it's completely, a moot point anyway. But anyway, what's going on with that? You also have written a book. Am I right, Rob? Can you enlighten us a little bit about that book and what's in that book? And you get a shameless plug time now.
There you go. Well, this is the Essential Cannabis Book, a field guide for the curious. And I did write that. It's actually on its 2-year anniversary. So it came out the day that Canada legalized cannabis, October 18th of 2018. So it's been out for 2 years now. And it does cover actually a lot of ground for 184 pages. So it does cover history, both domestic and internationally. And that might be the part that I'm particularly fond of, because I have to say it was intriguing to go through the history and then try to give a coherent story, and then also compare it to what's happening in the world, because every country handles it so differently that I just find it fascinating. So it starts with history. We go over botany, we go over science, methods of consumption, medical possibilities. We go over social issues. I have resources like annotated websites. And then, of course, because I like to cook with cannabis, and that's kind of a sideline business, I have actually 3 chapters in the book on cooking with cannabis. Infusion, how to run a dinner party, both a beginning dinner party if somebody's brand new, or how to run one for people who are experienced. And then I squeezed in 40 recipes. On top of that, I interviewed 20 people who are involved in the cannabis industry, and their stories are sprinkled throughout the book. So I have dispensary owners, I have medical patients, I have cannabis chefs, I have nuns who grow CBD flower in California, a sheriff in Aspen who's pro-cannabis, just very intriguing stories. And I thought that was a way to pull the readers in, because I thought, well, if you see your neighbors, colleagues, people like you, it kind of normalizes cannabis. So I like that part too.
And of course, you can get that on Amazon. Am I right?
You are right. You can get on Amazon, a few dispensaries, some college bookstores, a lot of online places. So there is very good distribution. Yes.
All right. That's fantastic. Well, Rob, I appreciate you spending a little time with us today. Are there any tips that you might want to share with a entrepreneur who has a company that's based on meal kits? In fact, Sam, why don't you tell Rob a little bit about what you've done with Dinner at Mary's, and then see if he might be able to give you a tip or two or something like that.
We'd love tips. We were doing primarily private catered events and ticketed events originally. We pivoted to do the meal kit delivery service. So we've shifted our model pretty dramatically and are now doing 3-course high-end restaurant quality food that for 2 people in a kit for local delivery with an optional cannabis gift that can be infused, that can be added to the recipe. So people are infusing themselves.
And do you provide any educational information for them in the meal kits?
We do.
Is there a brochure or
there's a
something?
recipe included, and we provide information on how long the cannabis typically takes to feel the effects of, how much we would recommend using. It's a 20 milligram gift for 2 guests, so we typically recommend 10 milligrams per person, but then also give recommendations for starting with 5 milligrams, for example, if you're not as experienced.
Experienced.
Yeah. So we include that that recommendation and that information as an educational aspect in each kit.
And she's marketing a chicken pot pie this week.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. I hope you took a piece of pastry and made it into the
we did.
ubiquitous cannabis
Yeah.
leaf.
So
Thank you.
every pod pie, and we do a photo shoot every month for the meal kits that we make them in. And my chef had, a cannabis leaf on the top of the pot pie, and I was like, "You do realize, we're taking pictures of this, so you're gonna have to do this for the actual meal kits." And he's like, "Signed up," because it looks great. It'll be nice and Instagrammable this week.
I did see that occasionally you offer Mexican food. I believe I saw some tacos in there.
We do, yeah. The taco kit is what we're delivering tomorrow. So yeah, we're doing a taco kit, and Nick, the chef, is Dominican. He has a lot of experience with that type of food and that cuisine, and we always try to mix it up. But yeah, we definitely.
One thing that I personally did when I made homemade tortillas, that is just kind of visually stunning. Is if you take a raw tortilla, and then you take a raw cannabis leaf, and you put it on there. You cook one side of the tortilla, you flip it over, and you actually cook the tortilla and the cannabis leaf together. And then when you take it out, and that's only like 45 seconds. When it comes out, it's actually kind of imprinted and slightly toasted on the top of the tortilla, and it looks beautiful. And then you can so I actually use that as kind of a placemat. So when people came in, they had their tortilla with their kind of imprinted cannabis leaf on there, and then they could add their own ingredients, and I called that rolling your own.
Love that. I'll have to give my chef a heads up about that. That
just give Rob
cool.
Mejia credit. That's all, because
you definitely get credit for that idea.
That's what we like to do, and I love that tip, Rob. You really have embraced the culture in New Jersey. I really hope that this initiative passes, and that another state will come on board on the East Coast. I also reported this week. We heard reports that Governor Andrew Cuomo from New York has a budget item. Once again, he's really trying to get legalization of adult use in his state. And they were, I don't know if they weren't able to get it done in the last year, but it does seem like now that Vermont has gone, Massachusetts has gone, if New Jersey goes, he's going to want to make sure some of the money from his state stays in his state, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one thing that you're going to see is I believe that after November 3rd, when New Jersey does legalize adult use, which I think they will, that there is going to be a race between New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. One advantage that New York will have, if they put it in their budget item, that means they can get this done legislatively. And if you can pass this by the legislature, your program can be implemented faster, you can be more nimble, you can make more changes. And so strangely, New Jersey may legalize by adult use, but then we have to put our legislation in place. And we do have a lot of it written already. But then New York can actually do it by their legislature and they can move faster. And that's how I think Pennsylvania is going to do it too. So unfortunately, I think that New Jersey might lose a little bit of our head start because we were not able to do it legislatively before. I think we will be ahead a little bit. We might have a good little 6-month, 9-month lead, but I do believe that New York and Pennsylvania will catch up pretty quickly.
And isn't it amazing that we're in this pandemic and how cannabis has an opportunity to actually help rebuild the economy, actually get and build more jobs and employment. I mean, it's almost like it was a perfect storm of different things happening, and now the cannabis plant could end up being embraced rather than scorned for 80 years in this country. I just cannot believe I lived to see this day, Rob.
I'm with you. Actually, during COVID, when cannabis was deemed essential, when those words came out, I thought, wow, that is something I never thought I would ever see. And other businesses are closing down, and cannabis gets the chance to pivot and serve people through delivery and curbside pickup and all the things we had to do to kind of keep everything going. But it was embraced as medicine. And people said, yeah, people need to continue to get their medicine. So it is essential. And I think that whole thing sort of helped normalize and kind of move things along. But yes, I'm stunned every day.
And you're teaching it, for crying out loud. And there's a minor at Stockton University too. I just think it's great. Now I'm finding out. I interviewed Max Simon from Greenflower this week, and we released that on our YouTube channel. And they're all about education. And now I believe there are 7 universities that have embraced their online curriculum as something you can take for credit. Rob, you heard my story about my internship. I couldn't believe I could get college credit for watching sports on TV, because that's how it all began in 1977. And now you're probably hearing a lot of the same thing with kids saying, I can't believe I'm getting college credit for taking cannabis courses, right?
Exactly. I mean, the students are very motivated, and they do like to show up to class. They have a lot of questions. I have so many people who are minoring in cannabis studies and who are even changing some of their minors. So I'm only seeing good things and growth. And I know Stockton's actually looking at a couple more online classes that I proposed to them as well. One on social equity in cannabis and one on integrated media in cannabis. So I'm hoping they'll take me up on that and I'll get to develop those courses for them. But the demand, the interest, the passion, it's all there.
It is. It's truly a perfect storm for this right now. Appreciate that. Hey, Rob Mejia, as always, I could talk to you for hours and hours because there's so many interesting aspects of what you've already discovered and encountered and documented and now built into your curriculum. I also understand that you might actually have a student that might be interested in interning with us in some capacity.
I definitely have a student who is interested in interning with you. We are shaping up their resume to make sure that they look good, that they're well qualified. But yes, they'll be ready to go.
Fantastic. Well, Rob Mejia from Stockton University in New Jersey. Again, thank you so much for joining us on our Professor Weed Wednesdays. And we will continue our conversation a little bit at some point down the road. But thank you again. Good to see you.
Absolutely. Wonderful to be here.
All right, that's Rob Mejia. Fun guy. Wouldn't you like to take a course with him?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I wish that was an option when I was in school.
No kidding. Well, we studied weed, but it had nothing to do with the classroom, as we are, right?
I did do a lot of cannabis research.
Research, that's right. Field
college.
research, we used to call that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, where'd you go to college?
Northeastern.
Northeastern University, right here in Boston.
Yep.
Okay, great school. Love their co-op program, by the way.
Great, yeah.
Love their sport and society program. In fact, I saw Dan Leibowitz recently quoted, and he's the head of that sport and society program there. And did you have, so I went to Tufts University in the 70s, way before anybody in this room was born, okay? and moved into Tufts when the drinking age was 18. Okay?
Yep.
On my birthday, I might add. My 18th birthday was the first day of move-in for freshmen at Tufts University. By the way, when it went to 21, I turned 21. So God has always been kind of blessing me and giving me opportunities to party, I guess.
My birthday's on the day the Prohibition ended. So I'm similar in that.
Okay, so there you go. There's some kind of sign there, right?
Yeah.
So in college, we had a water pipe. And of course, it was made up of chemistry beakers, and we named the water pipe Horace.
Okay.
Not quite sure where and how we came up with that. I'm sure it had something to do with the lab work and the research we were doing. Did you have anything like that in your college? Did you have a bong, perhaps, that you named? Or
there are a lot of named bongs, yeah.
Yes. Anyone in particular that comes to mind?
We're still part of a very into a food. Are you worried about the FDA at a federal level, even if you got it?
So I keep them around. But no, I think my first pipe was actually named Mary. Interestingly enough,
that makes sense.
That she is no longer. I don't even know what happened to her. But
right.
That's been kind of a.
And I'm guessing dinner at Mary's had something to do with the Mary Jane thing.
Yes. So it's the innuendo of Mary Jane. Mary's also my mother's name.
Ah.
And
I had an Aunt Mary, so there you go.
Yeah, so my mom's a great cook, and I grew up not even realizing how privileged I was to eat the kind of food I was eating, and really got me into the food industry. So she'd worked in restaurants as well, but I think that the main reason that I got into food was because of my mom's cooking and paying homage to that, also with an innuendo. But yeah, she's Mary of Dinner Mary. It's not her company, which people get confused about, is mine, but it was inspired by my mother as well.
Okay, there you go. And look. By the way, the role of the mother in the cannabis industry is extremely well documented. If you watch Weed the People, which is a great documentary put out a few years back in California, don't die on us, Dan. We need you here, okay? And there's so many opportunities to learn through media. Different ways to consume, that's certainly out there, but we focus a lot on the news information, the medicine, how to use it, what effects it might have on you, so that you'll learn something along the way on your journey as you get enlightened if you want to enhance your life with this plant, because God put it on this earth for a medicinal reason. And there's some recreational enjoyment too. I think we can both agree with that. There's a tremendous socialization aspect of this plant, and we are totally seeing that already. But I do want to go back to one more clip that we have from our show with David Youssefzadeh.
Yeah.
David Y. Okay, and there was from that show that we did on We Talk with Kurt Dalton, and Dan McCarthy was there. And we talked a little bit about how early it is still in the industry's growth. I mean, we're talking about a nascent industry. There's 11 states that have it legalized. Then you add in Washington, D.C. Now you've got, I believe, 5 states on the ballot to legalize adult use, recreational, of cannabis. But realistically, even if they voted in, like they did in Massachusetts in 2016, it still took 2 years before Massachusetts actually opened up their first dispensary. Other states have been able to open up much quicker, sooner, and some perhaps you could make a case opened up too soon. But in the meantime, everybody's doing it now. We're getting it and more accepted. Let's listen to our chat a little bit about how early it really is in this industry. We're still part of a very early stage, huge industry, right, guys? And you have to, patience is built into you if you're in this industry. Don't you think?
It's a marathon, not a race.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, you've been in the queue for 8 months with not a lot of communication on, hey, you're 2 more weeks, you're ready to, you're just like, could be tomorrow, might be in 3 months.
Zero communication.
That's tough to do.
And we don't have any retail space. We're a manufacturer, so no one is coming into our storefront. So our security measures, everything is I mean, in general, I think much more straightforward than what a dispensary would have to go through. But in addition to that, I've opened 6 restaurants. My business partner has opened 2. So between us, our food safety, our track record, this is what we do. We're just merging cannabis in as another ingredient. So we were hoping that would leverage some credibility in our, being tasked with providing something safe and nutritious. But it really doesn't seem to matter.
The live in studio production of Pro Cannabis Media that we do Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 4 p.m. Eastern to 6 p.m. Eastern. And I'm joined in studio by Sam Kanter from Dinner at Mary's. Now, I Googled Dinner at Mary's, and a few other companies came up.
Interesting.
But you have the hyphens going, am I right?
Yes.
So
Dinner hyphen Mary's.
So two hyphens. Is a hyphen?
hyphens, yeah.
Two hyphens. It's Dinner at Mary's with hyphens after dinner and after at.
Yeah. I
Correct?
mean, hopefully we're coming, if we're Googling it, if we're Googling Dinner at Mary's, hopefully we're at least coming up in that first page.
Oh, no, you're on the first page. But I definitely clicked on a few others out there.
I think there are some Marys that cook dinner at home that,
Right.
yeah, do some blogs about it. So,
Right, but it's not the Mary Jane that we
of
know
course
and
not.
love
No,
and
no,
right.
definitely
Okay.
not what we're
All right.
what we're doing.
And okay, so that's cool. And we were talking about infused beverages, and we got a chat from someone from Arkansas. I don't know if he was from Bentonville, Arkansas, perhaps a Walmart employee of some kind. But anyway, they asked about where you could get some of these infused beverages. Now, we both agreed that California is definitely the market that is open now for the infused beverages.
Yeah.
I do believe, you said, Massachusetts, they're coming to Massachusetts, another legal state. So I'm going to then take a bit of a jump here and think that all legal states will have an opportunity to go to a dispensary to get infused beverages.
Right.
Now, that dispensary may be a medicinal dispensary or an adult use recreational dispensary, but every state is different. And again, another reason why I get fascinated by this industry, because now you can bring someone on from New Jersey to hear about what they're doing. And then, of course, everything's going to either get passed through the ballot box or through the legislature now. The legislature can make changes to that ballot box referendum question. And so, again, it just goes back to every state's going to be different. So we're always going to be needing to have a central location or a central talk show or something that has this opportunity to find out these things, right?
Yeah.
Because every state's going to be different. And your model may not work in Wisconsin or in Michigan, but it may work in New Jersey because it's working here in Massachusetts.
Yes.
How difficult was it to work through the legalities of this, and how many hours did you have to have?
I mean, it's really difficult. It's still difficult. And we're working with a gifting model. But there are other things that we want to do that we can't do with a gifting model. So, we're talking about licensing. We're talking about that process.
Yep.
But it's very challenging, and it's not just challenging because of the legislation that's in place, but it's challenging because of the legislation that's coming, and it's also challenging because there's really no clarification. And to be realistic and transparent, a lot of the people that are trying to stop a lot of these things from happening don't understand them at all and don't really know the rules either.
Right.
So I mean, it's hard to
it's confusing
to
for
police
law
something
enforcement,
when they don't know
Right.
what's legal and what's not.
Right.
And
then you have DAs that don't even want to prosecute cannabis crimes right now.
why would you? I
Right.
mean, let's be realistic. Like, why would you? I mean, the fact that they were ever policed is kind of beyond me. I don't understand it, but certainly not now. I mean, people are being let out of jail because of cannabis crimes. I certainly don't want to put people into jail.
Did you know, and you're an enlightened woman, I appreciate that, of course, how many arrests for cannabis possession in the United States last year? And here's a hint. First of all, they went down from 2018 to 2019, but there were still more arrests for cannabis possession crimes than for violent crimes in our country.
It's
insane.
It's asinine. It's asinine is what that is. It's insane, and it's a real big waste of a lot of people's time, in my opinion.
And tax money, and our jails are filled with people that were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they found whether they were targeted by law enforcement just because of the way they were, looked, hung out, clothing, whatever it was.
I can't get it to work. God.
It was so I believe it was 536,000 arrests.
Oh my God!
For cannabis possession.
I think that's another reason to defund.
Right. Well, no, I'm not going to go there.
Right. I will go there.
Right.
But yeah, you certainly don't need to. But I think that that sounds like there's too much time in their hands, because that's not something we should be prosecuting.
Right. But there again, I don't. And it's easy. By the way, easy to point fingers at that. And I mean, by the way, the law enforcement is such a tough job. I'm sorry.
Very difficult. Yes. Very challenging job. Absolutely. Some people do a great job and some people don't. So yeah, it's really challenging, and they're not making the rules that they're enforcing. So you can't put it all on them. But that sounds like a number that's ridiculous in my opinion. I mean, that shouldn't be happening, and hopefully we're moving in a direction that it's not.
Right. Well, hopefully we are, and Lord knows Steve D'Angelo in the Last Person Project is really trying to get all the people who have been incarcerated for cannabis crimes out of jail, and we support him 100%. Oh, sure. I was about to go to our next guest, but she decided, oh, there, she's back. Okay. So we're going to bring someone in now who is a rookie cannabis chef. Okay. We all in this on Pro Cannabis Media happen to know this person. She's been on Jimmy Kimmel a couple of times. You may have seen her. Okay.
Cool.
And I know she loves to talk about that. But it's Karen Solomon. She is our VP of Business Development and Strategic Marketing out of Santa Barbara, California. Hi, Karen.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Great. I can hear you and I can see you. Hi, Sam.
How amazing is technology, huh?
I was trying to figure out how I was going to, be able to project myself through all the way from California.
Well,
it's working.
We're happy you're here, and there's a couple of reasons why you're here. First of all, because you live in California, and you're part of the most mature, what I consider to be the most mature cannabis market. I believe 80% of the illegal cannabis traffic comes out of Humboldt County, which is in the north of Santa Barbara. I know that. But one of the questions we got from our chat room was about infused beverages. Can you buy infused THC beverages at the dispensaries in California?
I'm drinking one right now.
Of course you are.
I know you can, because I've bought them in California.
There you go.
Yes.
So I that's fantastic. And
so
I
found this particular tea. It's a tea that is infused, and I would love to figure out how I can make my own. It's a little bit complicated, I think, but one day I'll figure it out. But here, I can show you the actual product. So this is the product.
Yeah, okay.
And I guess it's called Kiko or whatever, but this particular one is low THC, high CBD. So that's why I'm drinking it now, because right now for us it's 2:30 in the afternoon. So it helps a lot. I recently had knee surgery, and I find that this has been a godsend to the fact that I cannot take anti-inflammatories. So I can't take Advil, I can't take Aleve. Therefore, the tea really seems to work for me. But yes, I am an amateur. Sam, I'm pretty impressed with what you're doing. In fact, I'm trying to figure out why nobody's done it here, considering that we are such a mature market.
Wow.
I've never, ever heard of anybody catering meals with infused cannabis. I haven't heard it.
Well, it's funny because when Linda Berry was on, the professor from Cleveland School of Cannabis,
Right.
she talked about cooking for celebrities and how Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle all have these private parties that she has actually been at and catered. So, I mean, that is really bizarre. There's probably an underground group in California. I'm going to go on a limb thinking, Karen, that your invitations just get lost in the mail or something.
I gotta think that after this show, I'm gonna know more of where they are. I mean,
hopefully, yeah. I mean, well, what we were talking about earlier, like the infusion aspect in those catering events are, they can't happen in a public way anywhere because of it not being a approved food additive and things like that. It gets complicated. So.
Right. Well, it has to do with the FDA and all that neat stuff. Right.
Right.
Yeah. DEA, FDA, USADA, and all the DAs in Washington, D.C., who can't quite figure out what to do with this product that can save the world. They will not embrace it until they are enlightened and educated enough by shows like this. Oh, and now, Karen, let me ask you a question. I'm going to put you on the spot. What's new in the studio?
I love the new logo.
Indeed.
I like it. You were talking about it this morning. I'm glad to see it.
I think we all have agreed now in our own little personal focus group that we like the purple background. This was designed by our webmaster. We'll give Jacob credit and a shout out here. And we discovered it not on purpose because that's just what we do here, and decided to make it part of the show, and it's been well received. So, and Sam, you like the colors?
I like the colors.
And the leaf. Now the leaf is overlapping the M. Is that confusing to you at all, looking at it from a brand perspective?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's important for certain cannabis brands to really put the cannabis leaf out there. Like we specifically didn't. We're more subtle.
Right. Well, you have Mary's.
Right, we have Mary. Right, so we went the innuendo route. I think in this scenario, you have to be a little bit more straightforward about it.
Absolutely,
that's a good way to do it.
And how many cannabis logos have the color green in it?
Many.
Like
Many.
99%, right?
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, I just thought I'd throw that out there. Karen, you got a cookbook of cannabis, I believe, as a gift recently. Can you enlighten us a little bit about your experience with that book, and have you tried any of these recipes?
Yeah, my kids are so cute. They're
adults, first of all. Let's make sure we understand that. Right.
They're adults, and they love the fact they make a funny. There's a song called "Mama's Cooking Weed in the Crock Pot" or something like that. There's a really funny rap song. I'll have to get it for you.
Please do, because that's actually one of the engaging things we've been talking about. Since I keep playing Shanti at 420 on all our shows, the younger people on our staff have encouraged me to solicit our audience for suggestions of other songs that have positive cannabis messaging to it.
Right.
Do you like that idea?
I'll get you that. I will definitely get you the song. It's a very funny rap song, and the kids always make fun of me because, of course, the whole house when I was first practicing before I got my cookbook, which I just got for my birthday in September, I would do it in the crock pot, and it would just, it just smells. The whole house smells. You can't get away from the smell. It's impossible. However, now that I've got my new cookbook, I can now, which is by Edibles, it's called Small Bites for the Modern Cannabis Kitchen. So I have a couple questions, though, for Sam, because I'm still trying to figure out the dosage part of all of this, because the way that the recipes are designed is somewhere between 5 and 7 milligrams each serving, I guess is how it is.
A microdose, yep.
So, so I made, this is my honey. I made honey. Oh my God. I made honey. Yep. I just used the honey jar to put it back in there, right? And the way you make it, it's really easy. This is the can of oil that I made. And it's interesting because it's not as green as I thought it would be. And then here's my can of butter. that I made.
Right. A lot of people use the can of butter. I know.
Yep.
I got to tell you, it's so true, Jimmy. It is so time consuming.
Right.
This is not for somebody who, like me, who when a recipe calls for coffee, that means not the coffee grounds. It means the actual coffee. I'm not a good baker, okay? So
Gotcha.
you have to follow the directions.
Right.
But what I'm finding is that the dosage that they recommend for some of these recipes, for some reason, they're not that potent for me. And I get it. It's probably because, something to do with my cannabinoids?
Your endocannabinoid system, which is tied to your metabolism.
Mm-hmm.
Or your metabolism.
Right.
So I made brownies. So we made me and my girlfriend got together. We spent an entire afternoon just between decarbonization.
Decarboxylation.
We should do a quiz. And then it's not over. We spent the whole afternoon cooking because you have to do it slow and steady, and you got to make sure the temperature, you don't burn it. Okay. But then once you cook it and then it cools, then you have to strain it through a cheesecloth, and then you have to put it in the refrigerator. So it's not like, boom, you have can of oil, or boom, you've got can of butter and you can start baking. You actually have to wait 2 days to be able to use it. So then the following week, we got together and we made coconut dipped chocolate bars. We made these chewy chocolate Elvis cookies. And my girlfriend has really gone overboard. She's making pumpkin cannabis muffins today. And then she made banana bread chocolate chip cookies, which were phenomenal. But again, I can't seem to
get a buzz from
get a buzz. It's I use cannabis to help me sleep. Besides, the CBD I use to, from inflammation and just old age, kind of thing, aches and pains. But I have trouble falling asleep. And so I really reach out to the edible side of, humanity. And so I made so those coconut bars and the cookies and stuff, I'm eating them. I'm waiting an hour. I'm it's 11 o'clock. I'm so tired. I just want to go to sleep already. So I made a box of brownies. Ghirardelli's are my favorite brownie mix. Against all rules, why the kids got me the cookbook was so that I would make stuff from scratch. And I, substituted, I think it's a third cup or something like that of the oil, and substitute it with my can of oil. Mm-hmm. And I have to eat an entire brownie. Now, when I did it the different way, the way that I believe the Cleveland professor, Cleveland Cannabis, I forgot what her name was.
Linda Berry, Cleveland School of Cannabis. Yep,
right,
that's
Linda.
what I'm here for. Yep.
Right. So when I did it the other way that she said that some people like to do it, where they just put the flour and the butter or the oil, whatever's going to be going into that specific recipe, I could only eat a half a brownie. I would it would hit me like a Mack truck and I'd pass out, which was great.
So it did the trick, Karen. That's good.
But that's the other way of doing it.
Gotcha.
Not the way that, based on the edible cookbook that I have, I wanted to see, well, what if I use the can of oil that I made and put it in the Ghirardelli brownie mix and see what happens. So it does work. I just have to eat it whole brownie. And the brownies are small. I mean, they're like bites. They're not huge or anything.
Brownie bites. I like those. And by the way, a lot easier to get brownie bites if you walk down the aisle. They're right on that shelf as I walk down the aisle, I can grab it. I do want to ask Sam a question about the oil, because this is oil that you gift to your meals.
Yep.
How do you create that oil? Whose weed are you using to create the oil? And go ahead. Now, I'm guessing this is a story too.
We get donations for our cannabis, and we do make the oil. Nick, my chef partner, makes the oil. We use a sous vide method, which is not something we've talked about today because it's a little bit higher end and you need some other equipment involved. But sous vide is a really consistent way to do it because you have so much control over the temperature. So that's how we typically make our oil and then strain. So we don't have the flour in the actual oil. But there's
now. Do you strain it through the cheesecloth, or do you strain it through like a colander, or is it you need?
No, it's like a cheesecloth.
Cheesecloth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because it is very fine.
Yep.
At that point, and you want it to be broken down when you're doing kind of what she was talking about is
Linda.
Linda, excuse me.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, what she was talking about with like having the most surface area.
Yeah.
So that's what we typically use. But we have a specific math. We're doing the method and math based on a certain amount of oil having 20 milligrams in it. We have the ability to make stronger oil. So it sounds like that might be the solution for you is making a stronger oil or butter if you need a higher dosage. And we were talking to a client about like our dosage is pretty low. 20 milligrams in our in that oil, works well for somebody who wants 10 milligrams. If they want more, like we have a client talking about doing, they want 15 milligram cookies, something like that. We're giving recommendations for that, and you would need a stronger oil for that because the amount of oil that recipe requires is not going to give you the milligrams that you want. So we were recommending an olive oil cake, for example, which is something that you might want to try.
Oh, yeah.
So if something that uses a lot of olive oil, if you have something that's not as strong and you want a stronger dosage, right? Yeah. So, or you can make, if you want to use a smaller amount of oil, you can obviously make a stronger dose. But with the oil you have, if it's too light for the amount you're using, then like an olive oil cake is a nice option for you maybe to use that oil and get the dosage that you're looking for by eating less.
So it doesn't have anything to do. It doesn't have anything to do with the potency of the flour.
It does. Like, I mean, that is certainly part of it. I mean, if you're using dispensary grade flour versus something that's more mid-low grade, you are going to feel the effects of that, absolutely. And the only way you're getting dispensary grade is from a dispensary, and they're doing the best they can. So, like for example, I only really eat. What I consume is dispensary level flour and edibles specifically because it's important for me to know exactly what milligrams I'm getting because I'm such low dose. We're really consistent with our oil, which is I would say one step down from dispensary grade. So I can do 10 milligrams of our oil. That works really well. But from an edible standpoint, I'm usually only taking 5 milligrams at a time.
Yeah, see, it comes down to your own personal preference for the buzz you want,
right?
Plus
so
your
we're
metabolism,
in that
your endocannabinoid system, and unfortunately, you really have to. You're a self guinea pig.
Right, you're experimenting.
Right.
You're experimenting, exactly.
Right. Which is important to do, and important to do, I think, for everything. And everyone always did that when they were younger with alcohol. Why haven't they done it with cannabis? So it helps you figure it out.
But
well, today I used the honey. I put a teaspoon of the honey in my coffee today.
Yeah.
And I did that in the morning, and I have been so focused, laser focused. It's been great.
Right.
That's what I do. I use cannabis to get work done, to work out, things like that. So for me, it's absolutely a help to me. And I know what milligrams to use. I know I'm basically always using sativa. But I'm absolutely focused when I use cannabis, and that's how I use it. So, but it took me a while to get there. Like not everybody knows what strains to use and what how much to take, and it takes a little while to kind of figure yourself out and
figure it out.
Karen, one of the things that I know we've learned, I think we've actually talked about this in some of our debrief sessions, is the movement towards a cannabis diary, where you're actually especially if you're using it medicinally and you want to keep track of the strains, what you used, how many milligrams, what effect it had. I mean, there are apps now out there that will help you with that as well. I'm just amazed that, you know, I think for years when you took a hit, there was that instant gratification, that instant kind of like, oh, wow, caught a buzz off that one hit, 2 hits, whatever. You know, back in the day, we had to smoke a whole bag to get to 2 or 3 hits. But, you know, that was back in the day. And now it's a completely different animal. But you still have to, what works for me is not going to work for you. It's not going to work for you. And yet we all recognize that there was a socialization about passing the joint. In the circle, around the corner, in the back, in the alley, wherever we were partaking.
Pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID.
Sure.
Well, you know, it's so funny you mentioned that. So I got to give a plug here to the Weejits group because they have these filters. So if I am going into a social, I say, look, if you want to, here's a filter for yourself. Here's a filter for you. Here's a filter for you. So, you know, granted, I'm sure if one of us had COVID, I'm going out on a limb thinking we'd all get it because we were sharing the air. And the smoke, which we're now recognizing is the way that this horrible virus is spread. And again, we try our best to keep a social distance in this studio. It's one of the things, as you guys know, I constantly preach. We got room, okay? We're not on top of each other. We got room. We've got the windows open here too. And luckily they're not banging down the doors or cutting internet lines or anything like that outside today. So,
well, I think that what we're doing, Jimmy, is we're trying to educate the industry because a lot of the industry, I hate to say it, is uneducated. And if you want to partake, you can do it and you can have fun with it. It's not, this is a great, that's why I love working for you and working on the show because I am learning so much. And I've been smoking since I was 13. So, you know, apparently I've been pretty successful in business and I haven't stopped smoking since I was 13. I mean, maybe there was like a couple years in between there. So that stigma is, you know, or when I was pregnant. But, you know, it's not what everybody makes it out to be. And that's what's so frustrating.
Right, and it's actually, I'm glad you mentioned the fact that you stopped when you were pregnant, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, no, but, and you had no issues by stopping. It wasn't like you were scratching and climbing the walls and withdrawal. By the way, skip a day or two of caffeine. How's that work out for everybody, right?
And just so you know, Jimmy, that does happen. You do get a headache. You do, because when I traveled abroad 3 years ago with my girlfriend, I didn't, you know, I knew I was not going to be able to smoke. And I did. I went through those, but just like as if you would if you stopped drinking coffee. It just gave me a bit of a headache because you're used to doing it. And so your body is used to it, just like you drink coffee. But once I got past that, I didn't withdraw. I didn't miss it. I didn't need it. It wasn't,
I would miss it.
And everybody, and I took 10 years off. I want to make sure every time I tell my own personal story. And I said, when my son was born, I was 32 years old. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to stop, prove to myself that I can actually be a functioning member of society, not partaking on a daily basis. And I actually accomplished that as well. So, you know,
I actually used it with my third child because I wanted to go into labor. So, and it worked. It worked.
Yeah,
2 hours later, my water broke.
I've heard this. This is not the first time I've heard this.
I have friends that have used cannabis during pregnancy. I feel like all the research is very inconclusive.
Right. And they've never come up with anything definitive yet.
Right. So I think that comes down to a personal preference, and that's not, you know, and if I ever decide to have children, then that's a personal preference I'll make.
You realize that now if my family's been watching, I'm going to hear about that.
Well,
because they didn't know that.
Well, it might explain. No, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that at all. Karen, as always, you do bring quite a bit to the table on so many fronts, and we appreciate you checking in with us from California. What's the temperature out there today?
No, it's crappy today. You don't want to know. It's crappy. It's overcast, gloomy. It's like 66 or something. It's gross.
Wow.
It's not that
Yeah,
different
it's not
than here.
nice.
Wow, that sounds like the weather outside. Although
Yeah.
it was 70 degrees here today.
It was almost 75, I think,
It was
at
a
one
70.
point.
Yeah, it was a very nice. We're getting a little bit of a tease. You better take advantage of it over the next few days, and then who knows when you'll see it again. Because
Well, thanks for
November is-
having me, Jimmy. Nice to meet you, Sam. And
to
I
meet
hope
you
to
too.
have you on the show again.
There you go.
Yeah, love to.
There you go. That's Karen Solomon checking in from California. And I told her with that cookbook. Have you seen the movie I, Julia? Of course.
No.
What?
I haven't. I don't
And
think
you're
so.
in this business?
I don't.
That's about Julia Childs. And it's a woman who started blogging, and she did every recipe in Julia Child's cookbook.
Oh, no, I know what you're talking about.
I,
I
Julia.
didn't see it, but I now know what you're talking about.
And if you haven't seen it, please check it out. You'll enjoy it. And it's a funny movie. It's a very and Lord knows we all need. That's one of the things I learned about in today's show today.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about coping with COVID.
Yeah.
And they were talking about the mental anguish that a lot of us have to go through. And of course, we were talking about, we all know mothers and fathers who have young children in their houses over the last 7, 8 months. I mean, and it's not easy.
Right.
And one of the things they suggested is watch a funny video. Watch a funny movie. Even if you've seen it before, if it made you laugh the first time, it'll make you laugh again. As a way to cope and help you cope, because we know laughter is one of the greatest medicines. Of course, there's another thing that causes
Yeah,
laughter.
you have
that
cannabis medicine before your,
that's right.
your funny video.
That's
Double-
exactly
double
right.
dose.
So,
Yeah.
hey, Sam, you know what? You did a great job. I
Thanks.
just want to tell you, I enjoy talking with you. I pride myself on the fact that we can actually have a conversation, talk about cannabis now, live stream it on the internet, and perhaps teach and inform people about what we're doing. And they can actually see, wow, these people aren't like, on the couch playing video games and watching Twitch all day.
Right.
No, they're actually watching Twitch, hopefully, and watching our show and learning something about it too. And we're gonna come up with some new things to make this show even more educational and more fun. I love the idea, perhaps, of the cooking tip of the day or something like that. We'll chat with your marketing department at some point. But really, I love and embrace everything that you guys are doing. We all know Joe Nelson from Ask Cannabis Chefs. He's another one out there. In fact, we're going to rerun the interview I did with Joe Nelson in April 2019. From another studio that was across the hall from where we are in this building. But he came in. He was one of my first guests, and I appreciated that. We've got the entire show with David Youssefzadeh, right? With Dan McCarthy from Weed Talk with Kurt Dalton. That'll also be rerun. But right after this show, we're going to run our Weed Talk News. We do a weekly news video, either with Kurt Dalton or with Ry Russell, our Weed Buds radio guy from Maine. He's filled in a couple times for Kurt. I'm waiting to hear actually from Kurt about his availability for tomorrow night. It's not like we wait till the last minute to find out these things. We just have to, because we're so busy putting together as much content as we do. But that'll be coming up following this live in studio stream. And then Dan French has a few others that we've picked up, all having to do with cooking with cannabis, working with cannabis. In fact, I think we're going to find the Warren Bobrow interview, and he has an infused beverage that he works with, and he's a writer for Forbes. He covers the Vice section for Forbes.
Yeah. Nice.
Why does it need to be Vice? Come on. If any, at this point, it's not a vice anymore. It's a plant. It's plant medicine. It's plant food. Everybody's doing plant diets and all this. Just
plant-based.
accept that it's here. Learn about it. Watch shows like this. Use Google, because Google knows everything. And in fact, I think I heard a recent story that the government's going after Google because they have a monopoly, and they're like, wait a second. Just because we came up with a great idea about search, there are other search engines out there.
Right.
But Google works.
Google does work.
And it's a great name, and it's an amazing company too. So you know what? How much money is enough money in corporate America? That's a question I ask a lot of, right? And I never get a definitive.
I think we've hit too much money.
That's right. I was going to say not enough probably is the answer, or too much is the answer, or whatever it is. But anyway, Friday is our Green Rush show with David Rabinovitz. My goodness gracious. If you thought last week's show with David, with Chris Walsh, the CEO of MJ BizCon, with Jared Mirsky from Wick and Mortar, and another host, Chris Day from Project Evolve, and we had an international call from Peru, a farmer in Peru. If you thought that was a good show, packed with information and interesting people, Friday's show is going to be just as good. I promise you that. And we ask you to tune in. And if you can't tune in live, we get it. Certainly it's available online on our twitch.tv/Pro Cannabis Media. So for everybody here at Pro Cannabis Media, for Dan and Isabel and Karen and Sarah and David and Rick and Sam in studio, I'm Jimmy Young, your host. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Take care.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Weed Talk News. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis News. Kurt Dalton is on another assignment tonight, so we go to the bullpen and bring in the main man himself, Rye Russell. Hey, Rye.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I know I'm no Kurt Dalton, but hopefully I can live up to your esteemed audience's expectations.
You absolutely will, Rye. And we're going to start this week in your state of Maine. It's just coming off its first week of weed sales in vacation land. So what are the big sales results in week one, Rye?
We are off to an incredible start. Opening day was a huge success here in vacation land, with 6 stores generating almost $100,000 in total sales and over $9,000 in sales tax generated for the state. So we'll wait for the official report for the first closing week.
It's so amazing, isn't it? You read about Colorado and Illinois setting all these monthly records of millions and millions. Massachusetts does at least 1 million a day now. And the state of Maine took them 4 years to get to that starting line. But hey, at least it's going in the right direction now, right?
It's about time. We are ready for it. And this is just the beginning.
And I got to ask you, how has the media coverage been? I checked a story from my old station, WGME TV 13 up there, and it seemed a little balanced, although they used that M word an awful lot.
Well, it is fairly balanced up here. However, I think that there's still a lot of ambiguity felt by the players in the market. And so I think there's still a lot of uncertainty of what the regulations are, how is enforcement going to be handled. But like all emerging markets, we're going to see some early adjustments and a very successful launch.
Well, our next story is also about another New England state, Vermont, and they passed legalization last week, and some predictions now are being released about that market. But first, let's go to New York with Deborah Borchart's Green Market Report. Deb?
Thanks, guys. Well, we are just beginning to get into the earnings season. Markets were closed on Monday, so it was a shortened trading week. This week, AFRIA reported its first quarter revenue of $69.6 million for fiscal year 2021. This is a 23% increase over the prior quarter and their 6th consecutive quarter of growth. They did report net losses of $5.1 million for that quarter. Harborside released preliminary third quarter 2020 results. The company said they expect revenue to come in at $18.5 million. Keep in mind, in June, their revenue was $15 million, so things are going in the right direction for Harborside. You should be aware that their ticker symbol has been changed. It went from HSDEF to HBORF. And the Valens Company reported third quarter financial results for the period ending in August. The company said net revenue was $18.1 million. That is a 10% increase from their third quarter in 2019 of $16.5 million. They also had a net loss of $3 million. And that's it for this week. I'm Deborah Borchardt with the Green Market Report for Weed Talk News.
Since Deborah was reporting on the earnings of many of the biggest cannabis companies, the public ones, you have to wonder who's going to jump into the Vermont market as it opens up? Now, Vicente Cederberg's Andrew Livingston put out projections that the market in Vermont could reach 250 million, but it might be 2025 or 2026 before that happens, right? Vermont only has a population of 600,000, but they call themselves the Green Mountain State for a reason, right? Ooh.
Absolutely. As far as licensing is concerned, I see a lot of the same challenges that we've faced and are facing here in Maine. That being said, Vermont is a beautiful state known for its tourism, with estimates of 13.5 million or more visitors every year. So even with the pandemic, people are looking for remote places, and often they're looking to reconnect with nature and unplug from the digital world. So some reports, I'm reading one report right now, Jimmy, that says we shouldn't be surprised if Vermont can quickly rise to 800 million, maybe even $1 billion market.
Wow, that's huge. And a state that only has 600,000 people in Maine, you just told me has 1.5 million now. So what are the projections for the whole market in Maine going to be?
Well, I think what we're finding, the medical market made a huge leap and major advancements last year. And I think with the addition of the rec market, I think it's going to quickly become Maine's top grossing export.
Wow, that's going to be interesting to watch, as most of New England now. And how would you like to be in New Hampshire? They're now surrounded by 3 legal states. Seems to me that governor might want to get a little revenue going in the right direction, but New Hampshire is a strange one of the New England states. No disrespect to some friends up there. Right?
The Granite State.
Are you afraid that New Hampshire might invade Maine someday or what?
No, I don't think so. The Granite State is a beautiful place to visit, but I like being up here in the Great White North.
There you go. All right, there are now 4 other states in the U.S. who will be voting on legalizing the adult use of cannabis in a few weeks. That's Arizona, New Jersey, Montana, and South Dakota. Now, on the other side of the world is New Zealand. And sure enough, they'll be voting on legalization this weekend. And right now, it's a dead heat. Right, New Zealand trying to become the 26th country to decriminalize, if not legalize, our favorite plant.
Well, polling is a split, 49 to 49, leaving 1, maybe 2% undecided up for grabs. This is going to be a nail biter.
And I'm going to just ask, you've never visited New Zealand, have you?
I have not yet.
On the bucket list, as it is mine. All right. From the research world, this fact really has been known for quite a while. And make sure if you go in for surgery and you're going to get general anesthesia, please declare to your anesthesiologist that you enjoy cannabis. Why? Well, you might just wake up in surgery. A study at the University of Colorado Hospital among 118 patients who had surgery for a broken leg, that group that used cannabis needed much more anesthesia than those who did not partake. So, Rai, have you known anybody who has awakened during surgery?
Luckily, I personally do not, but I saw this article this morning, and I'm really glad we're talking about it, Jimmy, because this is truly one of those, there are those that know and those that do not know types of things, and you don't necessarily want to be one of those that did not know. So if you're going to surgery, this is information to please share with your doctors.
Absolutely, 100%. And they're not there, by the way, to arrest you or hassle you or judge you. They're really just there to, well, take care of your body in whatever way it needs to be taken care of. So put trust in your medical community. Now, let's go to the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., for the D.C. Cannabis Report from Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast. Phil?
Vote Pro Podcast, here with the Weed Talk News D.C. Report. New Jersey Senator and one-time candidate for president Cory Booker raised the issue of racial disparities in marijuana enforcement during his questioning of Supreme Court nominee Amy Coney Barrett on Wednesday. While he didn't ask Barrett any specific questions on cannabis policy, Booker did point out the disparity, saying, quote, "There's no difference between blacks and whites for using drugs, but blacks are multiple times more likely to be arrested. The Senate Judiciary Committee will vote on the Barrett nomination on October 22nd. The Supreme Court this week declined to hear a case challenging the constitutionality of the DEA's Schedule I classification of cannabis. The suit was originally filed back in 2017 by a coalition of medical cannabis patients and activists. While fewer than 1% of petitions are granted a hearing by the High Court, the decision is nonetheless seen as a stinging defeat by legalization advocates. Representative Earl Blumenauer of Oregon, one of several members of Congress who signed an amicus brief in support of the lawsuit, vowed to continue the fight, however, saying, quote, "It's more important than ever that we pass the MORE Act." Washington, D.C. Councilman Robert White introduced a bill this week that would expand opportunities for people with felony convictions to participate in the medical marijuana market. In introducing the bill, White said, quote, "There is no reason why those who've paid their debt to society should be locked out of this industry any longer." The legislation would end a ban on participation by most so-called returning citizens and create programs to encourage cannabis entrepreneurship among the formerly incarcerated. That's the Weed Talk News DC report for this week. I'm Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast.
A new report released by the FBI shows once again how law enforcement officers target persons of color for weed possession. The Uniform Crime Report claims that there were 545,602 people in the U.S. who were arrested on cannabis offenses last year. Now, amazingly, that same study reported that the number was more than 495,871 who were arrested for violent crimes. Now, what's even more disheartening is that 92% of cannabis arrests were for possession. Rye, black people are 3.6 times more likely to be arrested than white people. Another reason why reform of the federal laws have to happen. Right?
This is just I do agree. This is just bonkers. The fact that we're still talking about it, these numbers speak for themselves. It doesn't matter what report you read. We need reform, and we need it within this next administration.
That's right. And a lot of the new laws that are coming out are expunging records. We know the job that the Last Prisoner Project and Steve D'Angelo have done. They're getting more and more people to get out of jail and get their records expunged. And that, I believe, is only the next green wave that will happen. But right now, let's go north of the border to Canada for Solomon Israel's Canadian Cannabis Report. Solomon?
I'm Solomon Israel from Marijuana Business Daily International, and this is the Weed Talk News Canadian Cannabis Report. Cannabis producer Aphria has reported growing recreational marijuana revenue for the quarter ended August 31st. The company's gross recreational revenue hit nearly 70 million Canadian dollars for the quarter, but that was offset by a decline in international revenue, and net revenue declined on a quarterly basis. Aurora Cannabis has sold off its stake in Australian medical marijuana company Can Group. The company told Marijuana Business Daily it still sees potential in Australia's medical marijuana market, but for now it's focusing on core markets in Canada, the United States, and more mature medical marijuana markets abroad. And the vast majority of leadership positions in Canada's regulated marijuana sector are held by white males. That's the conclusion of a new analysis from the University of Toronto's Centre on Drug Policy Evaluation, which included 700 executives and directors of Canadian marijuana firms. All told, 84% of those leaders were white and 86% were men. You can read those stories and more at mjbizdaily.com. I'm Solomon Israel from Marijuana Business Daily.
The MJ Biz Daily Factbook for 2020 is now available, and did you know that the median salary in the cannabis industry was $58,511 in 2018, while the median salary for U.S. workers as a whole was $52,000. That's according to Glassdoor data, just one of the many facts you'll find in the MJ Biz Daily Factbook. You can get yours online at mjbizdaily.com/factbook. A reminder that the CEO of MJ Biz Daily, Chris Walsh, will be joining David Rabinovitz and myself on the Friday edition of Cannabis Chat on the Green Rush program on twitch.tv/. /Pro Cannabis Media live at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And speaking of upcoming programs, our friends at Green Flower are hosting an online conversation that is hosted by Max Simon, their founder, and two people from Normal on Thursday, October 22nd at 11 a.m. Pacific and 2 p.m. Eastern. Jen Michelle Padini, their development director, and Keith Stropp, the founder of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, will join Max. Now, you can register on their website, green-flower.com. Max Simon is my guest on In the Weeds this week, and we release that show on Mondays on our PCM affiliates and social media outlets. Now, one final story to talk about this week, and yes, it's back to the great state of Maine for this one. I know Bangor, Maine is a little north of where you are, but there's a police officer on the force in Bangor who has quite a following on Facebook, and sure enough, he used that forum to enlighten Maine people about the new laws. Do you know about this guy, Lieutenant Tim Cotton?
Lieutenant Cotton is quite a local celebrity here. And the Bangor Police Department, believe it or not, they have been producing some of the greatest social media content of any police department in the nation. And it's terribly clever. It's super funny, and the public loves it. It's genuine, it's real. And what I found funny about this post was the disclaimers at the bottom of it. They recognize that you can sometimes in today's world get attacked from all angles. So there was a funny disclaimer, and we'll have to check it out, but it said that if you don't agree with the views or messages of that post, that it's okay because the writer doesn't want to do this job anyway. So they're hilarious.
Yeah, I totally do. And, you know, it's very interesting as we sit here and we laugh about this, and it got national attention. But it's this kind of a public service of information, an exchange of information, where he's legitimizing the fact that, hey, it's now legal now. It's okay if you get the munchies. It's okay if you partake. Just don't do it against the law, like don't smoke it in public, and make sure you use it responsibly, and don't drive. And those are the messages that the public needs to hear. We understand that. But a lot of times when these public service announcements that are being produced by, let's say, the Massachusetts Cannabis Commission, when they come out very patronizing and pretending that it's, oh, you know, it's still a dangerous drug. You have to be careful with it, and you do. But you don't have to be arrogant about it or patronizing about it. Just accept that it's here and teach people about the substance. Do you agree with that, Ryan?
I 100% agree. I don't think anybody in today's world needs a lecture. We're all just trying to exchange information peacefully so we can live our best lives.
Oh, I like that. Live your best life. That sounds like the Green Nurse Group. But anyway, that'll do it for this week's Weed Talk News. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. And you
I'm
are?
Rye Russell.
And where are you
from?
I'm
Rye Russell from Weed Buds Radio. Thank you so much, Jimmy, for sharing the love.
You bet, Rye. Thank you so much for filling in with Kurt. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Weed Talk Now, Weed Talk News, and In the Weeds are all available on most major podcast distributors like iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and our friends at clnsmedia.com and our flagship, cannabis.net. So subscribe, share, and like our videos on all the social media networks out there, including LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the WeedTube, and YouTube. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge, and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.